The title of this breakout session is Bolstering Your Advisory Committee Toolbox, Advisory Committee Governing Board Toolbox. And I'd like to preface this by saying that this is going to be pretty much a repeat, partial repeat of what we covered yesterday in a 3-hour training session. CECA, over the years, has always, our mission is to educate and help advisory committee members to their highest potential. This is what we'd like to do, and we always thought that, how can we do this besides we've got our conference and we've got our regional conferences, and we are in the process and we hope to have finalized by January a prototype for an advisory committee handbook. And this handbook would have in it what we think you should get as advisory committee members. I'm not giving you a copy of this because it's hot off the press. It's a work in progress, but it's such things as advisory committee governing board commitment. This is kind of my index. Would have the roster of members, roster of the public authority staff, roster of important IHSS staff and titles, County Board of Supervisors. Then we would go into such things as independent living philosophy and history, IHSS history and formation of the public authorities, philosophy of consumer control in IHSS, AB 1682 information, statutory requirements, the IHSS system, an organizational chart, county ordinance establishing the public authority advisory committee. Do you all know that every single county has to have a county ordinance that established you? Do you have a copy of that? Have you read it as an advisory committee member? Do you have advisory committee bylaws? Have you seen them? Do you have copies of them? Brown Act information, do you have that? I know I was absolutely stunned this last time when I re-upped at Santa Clara that with the Board of Supervisors, and as part of my package, they actually gave me a packet of the Brown Act. So and how many people actually get that? Budgeting information, membership information, membership education, we're going to cover that today. Short and long-term goals, strategic planning, advocating, educating, and fulfilling your mandate, reporting to the Board of Supervisors, CECA and CAPA information, gathering information. Anyway, a whole list of things. And my question to you is, how many of you, when you get onto your advisory committee, actually get a notebook? Oh, that's excellent. Very good. It tells you what your duties are. I know there are, I bet you, so it's looking like maybe half of you get a notebook and actually know what your mandates are. So of that, I'm really very pleased to see. The handbook, if you are a member of CECA, the handbook will be free. You'll get one copy for your advisory committee to utilize. And what this is, it's sort of like you can take it and then do with it what you will. Make it so it works for you. Some of the information you're going to want to include, some of it you're going to have to put your own info in there because it's everybody's advisory committee is a little different, everybody's county's a little different, so you're going to want to make it work for your county and your folks. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is budgeting. We talked about this yesterday in one of the breakout sessions in the afternoon. It's an ongoing issue, and in the, I think in your notes, and somebody said in the back of the room there are also some handouts that you can pick up. David, are there?
There are some handouts back here.
Okay, well, you don't have to hand them out if you want to. I don't even know what they are. But you will be getting a all-county fiscal letter. How many of you have seen the all-county fiscal letter, which actually delineates what you can use your AB 1682 funding for? Good. Some of you have, and some of you haven't. I think that's back there. I'm not positive. If not, it's in your handouts. But I think it's something that everybody should have. You should be looking at it. You should be very aware of it. We fought long and hard with CECA and with the advocates to make sure that this letter finally got written, because there was always so much difficulty with counties actually budgeting their funding. And the counties say, you can't do that, you can't do this, and there is still an issue. How many of you actually budget your own funds? Your own AB 1682 funds? Not many. Okay, you should be. You get about a little under $53,000 a year for your advisory committee. And there are certain things that and the funding comes from the state. There's no county money in it, and there's no federal money in it. It's a drawdown process. You spend it, and then the county, it filters through the county, and the county goes and draws that money down once it's been spent. They repay you, in essence. It's for you to do your business, and it's so that you can be an effective advisory committee. This is the only, I bet you, commission or advisory committee in your county that actually is funded. So that's why we are so different than any other county board or commission, because we have a mandate from the state, and you're also funded from the state. So when the county tells you that, you know, you can't have that money, this letter is what tells you, yes, you can, and yes, you can fund it, and yes, you should budget it. Now, when you budget it, the budget many times, oft times, goes through the Board of Supervisors for approval. They have to see your budget. But I totally recommend that you do the budgeting. And that's not to say that you might have to sit in I think a lot of counties, when they budget their funding, here in Santa Clara County, we have a fiscal committee that actually sits, and I think a lot of, Joe, you probably do too, a subcommittee where you actually get together with the fiscal committee, you draw up your budget, looking at last year's budget, how you've spent your money, and then take it to your full committee, and then it goes to the Board of Supervisors. And lots of times, it's helpful to have somebody from the public authority in on that discussion, and maybe even somebody from the county in there on the discussion, because lots of times you can fill in the gaps with your funding where the county has had, or the public authority has had to decrease their funding, especially with the huge decrease that so many of our public authorities had to take last year. In Santa Clara County, our public authority used to fund all of the newsletters and any information that went out to the providers or consumers. The public authority was able to fund. Well, we had something like a 47% cut. Marin, yours was horrendous, I know. And so now we are funding the newsletter, partial newsletter mailings, and duplication of that newsletter out of our funds, and we were delighted to do that. So there should be some give and take discussion with folks to see how you can spend it. Just to tell you the honest to God truth, if there's not, you're going to be hard pressed to spend $53,000 on ADA compliance and on lunches or food or even coming to the conference. I mean, that's a lot of money. But it also gives you a huge opportunity to do your strategic planning meetings. We utilize it for off-site strategic planning meetings to actually go and take 2 full days to figure out where we're going. We do it every 2 years, long-term and short-term goals, and to review the old strategic plan and develop the new one. And we always have a facilitator that we pay that comes to those meetings. So that is a very appropriate expense for your budget. Have people come in. I mean, do you need somebody to come in and help you with presentations to your advisory board? Do you want somebody to come in and help you do a survey? That's another thing in Santa Clara we've done. We've used our money to do consumer and provider surveys in the county, and that's been a huge help for us. What's working with IHSS in your county and what isn't? Use your AB 1682 funding for that. We do that every 2 years with our funding. So there's a lot of creative ways you can use that funding. There are some examples. Santa Clara County's updated one is in there. I think we have one from Humboldt, an example of the way they budget their funds. If you ever have any questions on this, go to the SECA website and ask us. We are trying to get a lot of county budgets up there so that you have examples of how people have been budgeting their funding to help you out. If you have any problems with your county, let us know. We can, lots of times, John Stansberry, who isn't here right now, but he's a consultant with SECA and was with Marin, but he is very, very good at interceding for folks with their public authorities or with their county people to sort of grease the skids, if you will, to help you out getting this process going. And so we're there for you if you have any problems at all. In the back of your handout is a section on additional materials. It's at the very end, and this is the handouts that came from the session yesterday, from the training session. Advisory committee nuts and bolts, sample public records request, respective duties of advisory committees, the people's business, Ralph N. Brown Act, and a guide to the Brown Act. I'm not going to go through all this, but you all know that the Brown Act, that because you're a public entity and you do the people's business, that you are governed under the Brown Act. You have to be open. That whole sunshine law is keep everything open and to the public. So there are a lot of issues. People keep saying you can't do that because of the Brown Act. You can't do this because of the Brown Act. Well, we want you to know that there's a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people don't understand it. It's here for you to, and there's also the guide to the Brown Act. I think it comes from the SCAN Foundation. That's very, very helpful too. I don't want to go through the whole thing because it would take way too much time. But it's here for you to read. Again, if you ever have any problems with this, SECA's here for you. Call us up, let us know. We'll get you in touch with somebody who's an expert on it that can help you out. Because if you're having trouble with your county or with somebody in the county that's saying you can't do this, you can't do that because of the Brown Act, you don't think they're right. The best way to counteract that is to get the real information and be, well informed. So we are here for you to make sure that happens for you. Okay, the next one is recruitment and training of advisory committee members. This was a session that I did yesterday. We are finding that recruiting really qualified, good advisory committee members can be a huge issue. And almost all advisory committees struggle with this. How do we get really good qualified people on our committees? And it is absolutely vital that you have a full committee for several reasons. Most of us have 11-member committees on your advisories. There are some that have, I think, 7. Is anybody here that doesn't have 11 members in your bylaws? Okay, how many do you have? 7. And how many do you have? 5. You have 5. Is that in your bylaws, or is that just how many you have on your committee? Okay, but what do your bylaws say?
I don't recall.
Don't know, okay. Check it out, because it's what county are you in?
Colusa County.
Colusa? I don't
Do you
know.
want to use the microphone, Janie?
No, it's okay.
All right.
This is just sort of off the cuff. Colusa, I don't know. Your bylaws say 7? Okay, that's how many you have. Okay. So it's important to know what your bylaws say, what the makeup of your advisory committee is. The state says you can have no more than 11. That's the state mandate on advisory committees.